Hey, welcome to Morning Manna for our second installment of our series this week, Impossible? It's Possible. My name is Anna, and I've entitled today's devotional, To Laugh at the Impossible. We'll look at Genesis chapter 18 in just a moment, but first allow me to give you a fast pass to our story. In Genesis chapter 12, God speaks to a man named Abram, and he calls him to a God-sized adventure. To sum it up, God says, leave your home, everything that you've known, take your family and move to a land that I will show you as you go. I'll make you a great nation. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing to others. Abram obeyed God and he moved. But as his story progresses, there's an apparent issue in the portion of God's promise about Abram's family becoming a great nation, because nations involve generations of people, and Abram's wife was unable to have children. Not only did Abram and Sarai not have children, they were also both old. They were advanced in years and beyond the childbearing stage of life. In Genesis 17, God again speaks to Abram, and he adds an H to both his name and his wife's name, and God promises Abraham a child with Sarah, and that through their child he would make them a great nation. In chapter 18, the Lord again speaks to Abraham. He says, "The Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall bear a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased from Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I'm worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I'm old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." Verse 15 says, "But Sarah denied it, saying, 'I did not laugh,' because she was afraid." He said, "No, you did laugh." Sarah laughed. Sarah heard God's promise, and she laughed at what she perceived to be the absurdity of the promise. Without a doubt, children was something that had been a desire of her heart at some point in her life. In fact, in her culture at the time, it would have been an expectation for her to have children. She was certain that it was no longer possible for her. And for that matter, she may not have even wanted it. Chasing toddlers takes a lot of energy. Sarah laughed at the impossibility of God's promise. As we read on in Genesis chapter 21, though, it says that the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time which God had spoken to him. Sarah laughed at the idea of God's promise because she didn't have the ability to fulfill it herself. But Hebrews 11:11 says, "By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised." She considered him faithful who had promised. Sarah recognized her own limitations. But when God said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" she believed him. Genesis 21 verse 6, it says, "And Sarah said, 'God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me.'" Sarah again laughed at the impossibility of the promise, but this time not in disbelief, instead in wonder and amazement. Is there anything too hard for God? Is there a God-sized promise you've been reluctant to believe because you don't have the ability within yourself to fulfill it? Again, I ask, is anything too hard for the Lord?